I had a call earlier this week from a person that said they had an appointment to euthanize their dog. And I don't even know this dog, and I'm already getting emotional just at the thought of that, because so often as a dog trainer, people are just looking for permission to euthanize their dog because they're acting aggressively. Doesn't necessarily mean your dog is aggressive. I want to go over the 9 different types of aggression. I think it's actually 7 that gets mistaken for more than that, and some people think there's even more than this. We're going to cover what they are, and then if there's a solution and what that might be. If you need more help and you are in this situation, please reach out. I've helped, I don't know, a lot of people. I've been doing this over a decade, hundreds, maybe more with my online courses and whatnot. There is almost always a solution, but we're going to get into it here. Let's do it. All right, first of all, how cute is this of me to try to make this theatrical for you versus doing a bunch of cuts of me writing. Genetic. Some dogs are born, we're going to reuse these another time. Some dogs are born, they come from parents that were aggressive. They were not designed to be family-friendly dogs. Maybe they were intentionally bred to be aggressive because that's what police officers want. That's what certain organizations want, is a certain level of aggression where the dog bites first and asks questions never. Personally, I went out and worked with the RCMP here in Canada with one of my previous mentors, and they started doing in-home breeding to create more aggressive dogs, because you can always manage and direct, almost always manage and direct aggression. Some dogs, though, are coming from places in the world where it's like, there's a lot of dog fighting, and no wonder you get this dog and you've done all the things and you've tried all the things and it's just straight up not working. It's really only controllable in highly controlled situations. This is probably the hardest thing that we're going to cover. There's a few other tricky ones, but you can control it through balance training. You're not going to win this battle through treat training, and you're definitely not going to win this battle through, you're not going to get to a point where it's just like, and the dogs, we can just trust the dog to do whatever. It's a lot of management with genetically aggressive dogs. Number 2 is health. This is probably the biggest reason for aggression. I've been studying dog nutrition and health and wellness for a serious amount of time. Has been taking it very seriously for about 7 years. And my years prior to that, maybe 5 years of dog training prior to that, like I still think about, a lot of them are gone now, but I think about the dogs that had issues. The most radically aggressive dogs I've ever worked with all had dental issues. Now, I personally I had a tooth go abscess a few years ago, and I didn't know what was going on. I went to 3 different dentists, which maybe that says something about the local dentistry industry around here. What is it that they're learning? They didn't know what was going on. My tooth was dying, and I went through hell. I was miserable. I was crying. I was angry. I was just a hot mess. And I was trying to communicate and go out to professionals to say, something's happening in my mouth. It was horrible. I could only imagine for a different species that's living with you, that's just in chronic pain. Now, this doesn't have to be dental issues, but it's the first place I look. The other place that I look is like, what are they eating? Are they absorbing any of the food? I've got a little pit bull right now, Peepa, that for 3 years that I had her, I was feeding, she should be like a 47-pound dog, and she was consistently like 38, 39 pounds, impossible to put weight on her. I was feeding her as much as my 60-pound lab, sometimes 65-pound lab. Don't tell Vega I said that. Sorry, Vega. And she wasn't gaining weight. Well, it turns out she wasn't absorbing. She didn't have the bacteria to break down animal protein, food or carbs. So whether I fed her kibble, whether I fed her raw, she wasn't gaining weight. The only way to figure that out is through animalbiome.com. I'll put a link below. If you have pet insurance, you can talk to your vet, and then you should have it covered, which is fantastic. The next one here, we've got lack of control. This is where dogs will get, some dogs, certain types of dogs, get off on the behavior of acting aggressively, and then it turns into aggression because, the situation just escalated and escalated and escalated, and then the dog has just developed that as a pattern. I don't know that they're inherently aggressive. It's not the same as this, but so often aggression, whether it's like something very serious like towards kids or other adults or dogs, kids being like really hard because of controlling the situation. Most of it is just, you just need to learn how to control your dog and not feel so bad for them all the time. So often people are like, oh, are you uncomfortable? Are you, too bad. If you had a child or a neighbor that was just like going around throwing F-bombs, punching people, you wouldn't feel bad for them. You might, because of their health now, you might be a little bit more sympathetic that like you've been trying to control things and turns out they have a health issue. You still always have to control your dog. This is what I see most of the time. I guess we're getting 4 and 5 at the same time. Territorial aggression. This area is mine. So often people will contact me and they go, I've got a livestock guardian dog. I've got a Great Pyrenees and he's aggressive. I spoke to someone recently. They have a, oh God, it's a Caucasian Shepherd mixed with a Great Pyrenees. If you are the breeder of this dog and you are watching this video, please stop. Nobody needs that. Nobody needs that, let alone people that don't have livestock or big properties and their parents live next door with a happy-go-lucky little pitty, and then her sister has some other dog, I think it was a lab, and they have like 6 kids, the people with the Caucasian Mastiff cross, and the dog is attacking the other dogs when the kids are out. Yeah, that makes sense. It's their territory and their possessions of it's doing what it thinks it is its job. Predatory, so territorial is like, comes back to control. You can prevent territorial aggression, but if you do have livestock, if you are on a farm, you need to basically like put up more signs, maybe get a perimeter fence. Your dog should probably be behind some sort of fence with the livestock anyway. Predatory aggression is like, I want to go out and kill that thing. You often see it with bigger dogs towards smaller dogs, but it could be, and it's very rare to see predatory aggression. This kind of aggression is like, a dog can live with a pack of dogs and then go out and kill other things. It's just looking to kill. It's genetic. It's very serious, extremely hard to change their mind. You need copious amounts of pressure to go wrong. We don't want that anymore. Muzzle training, controlling the environment, controlling the situations, and then changing your expectations. It's very, very intense. You'll see dogs like this that will just like dismember a skunk, which I've seen. Craziest pit bull I ever worked with has killed multiple porcupines and skunks and dogs. We stopped the program I stopped the program with them on our 3rd lesson. The guy was like, but how do I still keep them like fairly aggressive? I was like, you are not taking this seriously enough. Your dog is very dangerous and you don't want this to change. Fear aggression. This is the one that I get called on the most. People think it's fear aggression. Here's what fear aggression is. I'm going to get you before you get me, which means typically something needed to have gotten it before. It needed to have a valid reason for that. Sometimes So that's like genuine fear aggression. I think oftentimes it starts as a little bit of fear and then it gets into reactivity. Oh, like if I blow up, that thing goes away and I get a big kick of drugs. I get adrenaline and dopamine and cortisol and sometimes serotonin, but then it very quickly turns into lack of control and people still think the dog is scared. But let me ask you this. If you're scared of what, snakes, spiders, most people don't like one or the other. When was the last time you saw like a big spider and like ran at it, yelling at it? Or a snake? You always go away from it. You might be like, stay the frig away from me, snake. But you're going away from the thing. That's been my experience. And I've lived in some crazy places in South America and Africa where it was fear. And I ran. This, you start here, you get control, and then you give access to whatever the trigger is once the dog's under control, and then they get to see, hey, you don't get that big reward of dopamine and adrenaline anymore, and I'm going to set up a scenario where the thing doesn't kill you. I've only really worked with one truly fear aggressive dog, like a dog that would mess, it was a Doberman, would mess up other dogs. And I had another trainer point out to me, a senior trainer, point out, look at all the little white marks on his ears. There's a Doberman that came from a breeding program, and they were little scars, they were little bite marks, but he was covered in them. So he was getting his ass kicked in the breeding program. And then the breeder was like, I'm all done with him. He's no good for breeding. And the dog, we were able to rehab him. Again, first control, and then we set up just social scenarios, pack walks, many dogs, muzzle training, obviously e-collar training. If you need a good e-collar course, e-collar 101, check it out on my website. You will love it. Resource aggression. This is mine. You're not allowed to have it. This it is in some ways control, but more than anything, it's a lot of counter conditioning to go like, hey, there's actually no conflict here, but you got to keep everything very safe. I do have resources on this inside my courses, but this one is a lot of times people think like, I just need to show the dog there's no conflict by like going over and messing with them. That's how you make resource guarding way worse. It's a whole system. It's a whole process. Maybe I'll put something together on YouTube. Currently, it's in my paid programs. But essentially, we want to change the dog's mind to like, hey, actually something better happens when you have that resource. Like, I have something better for you. Imagine you're eating your steak or your vegetables, whatever you're into, steak and vegetables, and I come over and I take one from you and I take it on my fork and I just poke them, have, oh, thanks, yeah, great. At some point, no matter how friendly you are, you might stab me in the hand, right? Especially if you're hungry. And so, which might actually be a health issue. You're not absorbing the food, animal biome, check it out. Resource guarding, we want to change the dog's mind, but we want to set up the scenario, and there might be some punishing events, but really we want to change the dog's mind first, that like, hey, when the person comes into the room or comes into the area around the resource, unless the resource is like a child, we want to teach them, hey, something better is going to happen. And then if it is a child, it's a whole relationship issue, and it's like, oh, it's a lot. Idiopathic, the unknown aggression. I don't think that's actually the case. I think it's actually health issues, and the real problem with idiopathic is if it's completely random. Okay, so this should really be switched to random. There's almost always a pattern. If it's one of these, there's almost always a pattern, unless it's this. Two main reasons that I see complete, and I mean no, like they're biting you, they're biting your partner, they're biting someone that they know, have known for years. It's often health. This happened recently to a client. The dog was doing fantastic. Her sister walked in. The dog grew up with her sister and attacked her. He was starting to show signs before that of just like be walking along and then just like lose it. Probably a brain tumor. if there's a mass pushing on the brain, firing off synapse, doing God knows what, it can be that. The other most common reason, probably more common than that I've seen and talked to a lot of people and vets about, is the edible flea and tick medication. Absolutely, it's a neurotoxin. So you're feeding your dog 3 months supply of neurotoxins all at once. That's going to affect them. So you can get an MRI. If it's not totally random, it's probably one of these. Sometimes you just need a professional dog trainer to bridge the gap by asking questions to say, well, what about this? And what does the dog do in this scenario? And sometimes you just need an outside perspective to go, oh, this is actually a pattern. But if it's not, and you fed your dog the edible flea and tick, you can do a liver cleanse, you can do lion's mane mushroom, you can do ashwagandha root, you can switch to a raw diet, you can do fasting, you can do a lot of things to clean them up. I have a golden retriever client that we cleaned up their diet and the dog was just stopped acting cranky, but he had some serious gut health issues. He had a heart issue, and all of these things we were able to solve with supplements, which I'm going to do a video tomorrow. So it should, by the time you watch this, hopefully there should be a link down below, or I'll link it at the end of the video. And the last one is intra household fighting. This with 2 male dogs or multiple male dogs. I would say neuter one or both if you can. It's a lot of management otherwise, which it's going to be potentially anyway, but I've got a great video that I did. I'll link it here with 2 German Shepherds, the whole system of how we got them from enemies to friends. But essentially it's control, long walks. Control, long walks. When they lose at each other, punishing, correcting event, long walks. And then slowly, systematically adding in more potential conflict, like resources, like territory, and then of course always addressing health. The star down here was actually this. I just realized that I wrote this out the other day. This was that. Thanks for watching. Know that you're loved. Watch one of these. I'm sure it'll help. Bye, meow.